My greetings to everyone. I am Professor Namita Rajput, Professor in Department of Commerce, Sri Aurobindo College, University of Delhi. In the ongoing series of corporate governance, today we have a very pertinent topic called corporate failures and the governance issues. The corporate failures have occurred throughout the history, which has often triggered by a combination of internal mismanagement, external economic factors, and at times outright fraud. So, we will discuss a historical overview of some significant corporate failures. So, let us talk about the South Sea Bubble 1720. That is all about the historical corporate failures. Let us see the background of it. The South Sea Company was a British joint stock company created to reduce the national debt by taking over the government debt in exchange for the trading rights in the South America. The company shares were widely overvalued due to the speculative mania and the misinformation about its potential profits. When the bubble burst, thousands of investors were ruined, leading to a financial crisis in Britain. The Panic of 1873. The financial crisis marked the beginning of long depression in Europe and North America, driven by the speculative investments in the railroads. J. Koch and the Company, a major US bank, failed after its speculative investments in the railroads went sour, triggering a domino effect of the corporate bank failures and a severe economic downturn. The Great Depression of 1929. The Great Depression was triggered by a stock market crash of 1929, leading to a widespread corporate bankruptcies and the unemployment. The major companies like the Bank of the United States failed to a combination of a poor financial practices and the panic among the investors and the depositors. This period saw a wave of the corporate collapse according to the various sectors including the bank, manufacturing and the agriculture. Then we have a Penn Central Transportation Company 1970. The Penn Central was the largest railroad in the United States, formed by a merger of Peninsula and the New York Central Railroads. The poor management, the misallocation of resources and an inability to integrate the operations of the two railroads led to the largest corporate bankruptcy in US history at the time. Now let us talk about the much talked about scandal. Yes, we are talking about Enron scandal 2001. Let's see the background. Enron was an American energy company that became one of the most infamous cases of the corporate fraud and accounting standards and the scandals. The Enron executives used off the books the partnership and the special purpose entities to hide the debt and inflate the profits. When the fraud was exposed, the Enron declared a bankruptcy, leading to a significant financial losses for the employees, investors and the pensioners. This scandal also led to the stricter regulations on the corporate governance, for example, the Surveillance-Oxley Act. Now we will talk about the Lehman Brothers 2008. The Lehman Brothers was a corporate financial services firm that played a very significant role in the subprime mortgage crisis. The firm's heavy investments in the mortgage-backed securities, combined with a high leverage and the poor risk management, led to its collapse, and the Lehman bankruptcy was a pivotal movement in the 2008 global financial crisis, contributing to the world economic downturn. Now we will talk about the Wirecard 2020. The Wirecard was a German payment processing company that was once considered a tech star in Europe. Now in 2020, it was revealed that $1.9 billion, the pounds in cash supposedly held in the trustee accounts, did not exist. This revelation led to the company's insolvency and the criminal investigations into its executives. Now let's see what are the common threads when you talk about all these scams and the crisis in the corporate failures. The first and the foremost what we are going to discuss is a mismanagement. The poor leadership, the lack of oversight and the strategic missteps often precede the failures. There are several frauds and the failures such as Enron, Wirecard involved fraudulent activities to hide the financial distress. The economic downturns, the broader economic factors such as the recessions or the depressions can actually exacerbate the underlying weaknesses within the companies. The regulatory gaps. In many cases, the regulatory shortcomings allowed the corporate misconduct to go unchecked, leading to a severe consequences. The impact and the legacy. The economic consequences. The corporate failures often result in a significant job failures, the loss of investor wealth and the broader economic disruptions. The regulatory reforms. Many corporate failures have led to the regulatory changes aimed at improving the transparency, accountability and the financial stability. The public trust is another important factor which is called and is responsible for the corporate failures. The failures undermine the public confidence in the corporate sector, which can actually lead to increased scrutiny of the business practices. Understanding the causes and the consequences of the corporate failure is very crucial for preventing the future collapses and promoting a more stable and a transparent corporate environment. The corporate governance refers to the systems by which the companies are directed and controlled, focusing on the relationships between a company's management, its board, shareholders and other stakeholders. Now let's talk about some key principles of the corporate governance. The OECD, that is the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, and the principles of the corporate governance are globally recognized as a benchmark for the best practices. So let's have an overview of these principles and how they provide a foundational understanding of the effective corporate governance. Ensuring the basis for an effective corporate governance framework. Legal and regulatory framework. A sound corporate governance framework depends on a clear and enforceable legal and regulatory environment. This includes the laws, the regulations and the standards that govern the corporate behavior. The division of responsibilities. The framework should ensure a proper division of responsibility among the different authorities, for example, the regulatory agencies and to facilitate the cooperation and the consistency in applying the governance policies. The rights and the equitable treatment of the stakeholders and the key ownership functions. The first and the foremost is your shareholder rights. The corporate governance should protect the shareholder rights, including the right to be informed, to participate in decision making and to vote on the important corporate matters. The equitable treatment. All shareholders, including the minority and the foreign stakeholders and shareholders, should be treated equitably. They should have protection from any abusive action by or in the interest of the controlling shareholders. The framework should provide a very clear guidance on the ownership rights and ensure that these rights are protected and facilitated. The institutional investors, the stock market and the other intermediaries. The institutional investors. The institutional investors such as the pension funds and the insurance companies should act in a way that supports the good governance. This includes actively engaging with the companies and promoting a better governing practices. The stock market. Stock market should function transparently and ensure that the listed companies, they should adhere to the governance standards. Intermediaries. The financial intermediaries should actually provide the services that support the integrity of the governance framework. Now let's talk about the role of the stakeholders in the corporate governance. The first and the foremost is a recognition of the stakeholders' rights. The corporate governance should recognize the rights of the stakeholders established by a law or through a mutual agreements and encourage the active cooperation between the corporations and the stakeholders in creating the wealth, jobs and the sustainability of the financial sound enterprises. Encouraging the stakeholder participation. It's very important that the stakeholders are involved in the corporate governance and their interests are considered, ensuring that the company's actions are aligned with the societal and the environmental objectives. The key principles of the corporate governance includes the disclosure and the transparency. Now, what are the disclosure requirements? Timely and accurate disclosure of all the material matters regarding the corporation, including the financial situation, performance ownership and the governance is very essential. Now, we will talk about the transparency. The governance framework should ensure that the key information is accessible and understandable to all the stakeholders, promoting the trust and accountability. The board roles and responsibilities. The board is responsible for overseeing the management of the company and ensuring that it acts in the best interest of the stakeholders and the shareholders. This includes setting the company's strategic aims, providing the leadership and overseeing the implementation of the policies. The next is your accountability. The board should be held accountable to the shareholders and be subject to effective oversight. The board composition and the structure. The board should be composed of the members who are capable of exercising the objectives and independent judgment on the corporate affairs. The OECD Principles of the Corporate Governance provides a comprehensive framework for ensuring that the companies operate transparently, responsibly, and with accountability to all the stakeholders. By adhering to these principles, the corporations can improve their performance, fostering a trust amongst the investors and contribute to the stability and sustainability of the broader economy. Now, these principles, they serve as a foundation for understanding what constitutes the effective governance in a corporate setting. Now, coming on to a role of a board of director. The board of director plays a pivotal role in the governance of any organization, serving as a bridge between the management and the stakeholders. So, their responsibilities are broad and they are tasked with ensuring that the organization operates in the best interest of all the stakeholders. Now, coming on to the key responsibilities of the board of directors. The first is the strategic direction. The board sets the overall strategic direction of the company, guiding a long-term goals and objectives, and they work closely with the management team to ensure that the company's strategic aligns with the mission and the vision. The next is your oversight of management. One of the primary responsibilities is to oversee the company's management, and this includes hiring, evaluating, and if necessary, dismissing the CEO and the other senior executives. The board ensures that the management team is performing effectively and in the line with the company's strategic goals. Now, there are some fiduciary duties also which makes a particular mention. The board has a fiduciary responsibility to protect the interest of the stakeholders, and this includes ensuring that the company's financial statements are accurate, transparent, and that the company is adhering to the legal and the ethical standards. The risk management. The board are responsible for identifying and managing the risk that could impact the company's performance. They work to ensure that there are robust risk management process in place to mitigate the potential threats. The corporate governance. The board ensures that the company adheres to the sound corporate governance practices, and this includes setting up of the committees such as the audit and the compensation committees to oversee the specific aspects of the company's operations. Now, we talk about the stakeholders' communication. The board acts as a link between the company and its stakeholders, ensuring that the interest of the shareholders, employees, customers and the community are considered in the company's decision-making process. Now let's talk about the challenges faced by the board of director. Now, the first is your balancing interest. One of the most significant challenges is balancing the often competing interest of the various stakeholders such as the shareholders, employees and the customers. Now, the board must make the decisions that are in the best long interest term of the company while considering these diverse perspectives. Now, the first important aspect is your maintaining independence. The board members must maintain the independence, especially when overseeing the management. The conflicts of interest can arise, particularly when the board members have a very close relationship with the company's executives or have a significant financial interest in the company. Now we come on to navigating the regulatory compliance. With increasing regulatory scrutiny, the boards are under pressure to ensure that their companies comply with a growing array of laws and the regulations. This requires staying up to date with the legal developments and ensuring that the compliance framework are robust. Adapting to change. In a rapidly changing business environment, the board must be agile and forward-thinking. This includes understanding the new technologies, the market shifts and emerging risk and ensuring that the company is well positioned to adapt. The next is your succession planning, ensuring that there is a strong pipeline of the leadership talent which is very crucial for the long-term success of the company. The boards are responsible for overseeing the succession planning, particularly for the CEO and other key executives. So we can say that the board of directors play a very crucial role in the governance by providing the oversight, the strategic direction and ensuring that the company adheres to the ethical and the legal standards. However, the role comes with the significant challenges requiring the board members to balance the various interests, maintain the independence and adapt to a constantly evolving business landscape. The agency problems in the corporate governance arise when there is a conflict of interest between the management agents and the shareholders. Yes, we are now discussing the agency problem in the corporate governance. The conflict can actually lead to the governance failures and the management may act in its own interest rather in the best interest of the stakeholders. So, let us see some key aspects of what the agency problems are. The first is your divergence of interest. The shareholders typically aim to maximize the value of their investments, focusing on the long-term profitability and the growth. The management, on the other hand, may prioritize the personal benefits such as the higher salaries, the job security, power which might not align with the shareholders' goals. The information asymmetry. The management usually has more detailed and timely information about the company's operations than the shareholders. So, this imbalance can actually lead to situations where the management makes the decisions that benefit themselves at the expense of the shareholders, with the shareholders being unaware of the full implications of these decisions. The management might take the undue risk, knowing that they do not fully bear the consequences of their actions. If a risky project fails, the shareholder lose their investment. but the management may not be affected as severely. The next is your monitoring cost. The shareholder must spend the resources to monitor and control the management actions, which can be very costly and inefficient. The board of directors is usually responsible for this oversight, but if the board is not independent or is aligned with the management, its effectiveness can be compromised. The next is your entrenchment. The management might make decisions to entrench themselves in their positions, such as pursuing their policies that protect their job or discourage the takeovers, even if these decisions are not in the best interest of the stakeholders. Now, we will have some examples of the governance failures due to the agency problems. So, first let us discuss the Enron scandal of 2001. The management manipulated the financial statements to hide the debt and inflate the profits, leading to a massive losses for the shareholders when the fraud was uncovered. Now, these are vital examples of the corporate failures due to the agency problems. The second is your WorldCom scandal. It is also counted as the agency problem which was responsible for the corporate governance failure. It happened in 2002. So, similar to Enron, the WorldCom management engaged in accounting fraud to present a healthier financial picture, ultimately leading to one of the largest bankruptcies in US history. Next, we have a Volkswagen emission scandal 2015. The management decisions to install and defect the devices in the cars to cheat the emissions test led to a significant financial and reputational damage to the company. The mitigation of the agency problems. The first is your incentive alignment. The stock options, performance-based bonus and other incentives can actually align the management interest with those of the shareholders by trying to compensation to the company's performance. The strong board oversight. An independent and empowered board of directors can actually effectively monitor the management action and ensure that they act in the shareholders' best interest. The transparency and the disclosure. Improved transparency and the regular accurate disclosure of the financial and operational information can actually reduce the information asymmetry and build the trust between the management and the shareholders. The next is your shareholder activism. Active involvement of the shareholders, especially the institutional investors, can exert pressure on the management to focus on the long-term value creation. The regulatory oversight. The government and the regulatory bodies can enforce the rules and the standards that limit the management's ability to act against the shareholders' interest. Understanding and addressing the agency problems is very crucial for improving the corporate governance and ensuring that the companies operate in a manner that benefit their shareholders and other stakeholders. The reliable financial reporting is indeed a cornerstone of maintaining the stakeholder trust and preventing the fraud within any organization. So, here's why the financial reporting and transparency are so vital. So, all these aspects are very important and they are crucial to prevent the agency problems and thus the corporate scandals. Building trust in stakeholders is also very vital, which allows the stakeholders, including the investors, creditors, employees, regulators, to have a very clear view of the company's financial health. So, accurate and timely reports can help in building the trust as the stakeholders rely on these reports to make the informed decisions regarding the investments, loan and other financial commitments. We need to also prevent the fraud. The transparency in financial reporting acts as a deterrent to the fraudulent activities. When the financial statements are very clear, accurate, regular, audited, it reduces the opportunities for the financial manipulation. So, this is because the discrepancies are more likely to be actually spotted and there is a less room for the unethical practices to go unnoticed. So, these aspects are very important to stop the corporate scams and the scandals. Thank you very much.